Well, welcome. This morning we are continuing, as you heard during the announcement, in our God in the Flesh message series. In this message series, we're looking at some of the really good and powerful doctrine of the Christian faith that we sing about each year in the Christmas carols that we sing. And it's at least my opinion that much of that good theology is lost on us, either one, because of the archaic language, English that's 200, 400 years old, that's just completely lost on us. And I think some of the good doctrine that we teach is lost on us just simply because we just go on autopilot when we sing so many of the carols, and we don't really stop to reflect what it is that we're actually singing. And so I thought it might just be fun this year just to pause and look at what it is that we're actually singing about each Christmas. And maybe for some of you it will maybe redeem some old, tired songs and turn them into worship songs. Well, last week I had warned you that I might spend at least another week on Hark the Herald Angels Sing, and that is in fact what we're going to do. And so in verse 3 of Hark the Herald Angels Sing, we sing these familiar words: Hail, the heaven-born Prince of Peace. Hail, the Son of Righteousness. Light and life. Do we have these? I think we have them on the screen. We can. Yeah, light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Now, you may not be aware of it, but these words are actually lifted straight out of the Bible. They come from a prophetic vision in the book of Malachi. Malachi is the very last book of the Old Testament. And so if you find Matthew 1 in your New Testament, and you go left one chapter, you will find Malachi chapter 4. Well, the prophet Malachi, who wrote these words, was the very last of a succession of Old Testament prophets, and he declared the words of this prophetic vision roughly about 450 years before the birth of Jesus. And this is what we read that he saw in this prophetic vision. So Malachi 4:2. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. Do you see the Hark the Herald part in there? Okay, yeah. It's subtle. Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. And you will go free, leaping with joy like calves let out to pasture. And so 450 years before the time of the birth of Jesus, this prophet Malachi foresaw this Son of Righteousness that would rise somewhere off on the horizon of world history. And this Son of Righteousness would have healing in his wings, of all places. Healing in his wings. And this Son of Righteousness would also set people free with joy. And so this is what you need to understand about the historical backdrop before which Malachi saw and proclaimed this prophetic vision. And I think that what you're going to see once you understand the historical context is that Malachi's setting will probably sound very familiar to ours. All right? So we're going to connect with the book of Malachi right now. In this 450 years between Malachi's prophecy and the writing of the book of Malachi and really the closing of the last chapter of the Old Testament. So 450 years between Malachi and Matthew, or Malachi and the birth of Jesus. And those years became known, those 450 years, as the silent years. They became known as the silent years. Some of you have heard me teach on this before, because after Malachi, just no word was heard from the Lord at all. No prophet was giving any words of prophecy. No scripture would be revealed and written down. The heavens were suffocatingly silent, and the people who were looking for God felt like he had abandoned them, perhaps even abandoned planet Earth. And it was said that during these silent years, it was said that not even the echo of God's voice could be heard ringing around the earth anymore. And so these silent years, 450 years, it was a very dark time for the people of God, and their hearts turned very far away from the Lord, and their land became defiled and corrupted by their just complete disregard for right living. And it just became a corrupt and dark time. And across the spectrum of every aspect of life, just things were broken. People's hearts were broken, their minds were broken, their choices were broken, their spiritual relationships were broken, their relationships with one another were broken, their society was broken, the entire country was broken. And so for 3 chapters then of Malachi's ministry, for 3 chapters of his book, preceding what we just read in chapter 4, God, through Malachi, is just calling out his people for the messes that they've become as a result of the messes that they've chosen. All right, so Malachi 1, 2, and 3 is just God calling out his people. So they're pretty rough reads. And so, for instance, this is what we see God calling the people out on. In the first chapter, I'm not going to go verse by verse, just kind of give you broad brushstrokes. In the first chapter of Malachi, God calls out his people just for the contempt that they have in their hearts for him, and saying, even when you guys get together to worship, it is just completely hypocritical and it is a detestable farce. Your worship is a detestable farce. And so the people had become spiritually broken, and it was a very dark and unhappy time. In chapter 2, God calls them out, for their relationships, the way their relationships are completely messed up. They betrayed one another, and they would make promises to one another, and they would never keep their promises. And later on in chapter 2, God calls them out for their unfaithfulness, even to their marriage promises. And he likens their lack of commitment. He likens their lack of commitment, their lack of relational stick-to-itiveness. He likens it to treachery and murder. In other words, God is saying, what do you guys want to know what you're like as friends? Do you want to know what you're like as spouses? How can I put this? Your stick-to-itiveness is about as good as a backstabbing, treacherous, betraying murderer. That's how well you guys do relationships. You say, this is what I'm going to do, but you do the complete opposite. You talk big talk, but you don't do what you say you're going to do. Like that's chapter 2 of Malachi. So relationships between husbands and wives and parents and children and friends and neighbors. It was just broken. It was a dark, horrible time. In chapter 1, there was also just relationships when you expand that out to society. In chapter 1, the Lord called their society the land, you guys are the land of wickedness. That was not a term of endearment, in case that's lost on you. In chapter 3, he rebukes them for you're dishonest to one another, you cheat one another, you oppress one another, you deprive social justice to the orphan and to the widow and to the outcast and to the downcast, and even, very interestingly, and you don't show justice and mercy to the refugees. I just thought that was interesting. In a time when refugees are having a tough time finding mercy on planet Earth. Well, later, that got a little bit political there, didn't it? All right. Okay. And later in chapter 3, then God calls them out through the prophet Malachi that even the crops of their land and the work of their hands is failing. Those things are failing because they themselves have become just selfish, self-centered, greedy, stingy people. And so their society had become broken, and it was a dark time, and it needed healing. And so lastly, then, as a final indictment against the spiritual brokenness of the people of Malachi's time, towards the end of chapter 3, God calls them out on their attitude that said, you know what, there's no point in even serving God because there doesn't seem to be any evidence. There doesn't seem to be any tangible payoff for living life God's way. You know, that living a life of doing whatever it is I want to do seems to be just as good as living a life where I'm trying to do what God wants me to do. So what's the difference? And besides, everyone I know who's living a life of sin and sensuality seems to be getting away with it, and they're having more fun, it seems, than I am. So what's the point of living right? And so in chapter 3, God calls them out on that. This is not good. And so it was a broken and dark time, and the people were spiritually broken, they were personally broken, they were relationally broken, and they were societally broken. And I think that in every way, then, at least it seems to me, that Malachi's context, conspicuously parallels the time in which we live today. And so it's against then this backdrop of these 3 chapters of indictment against the reckless living and resultant brokenness that in chapter 4 then the prophet Malachi gets this sneak peek into the future, and he sees something coming on the horizon. He sees, a light at the end of a long dark tunnel. He hears a voice at the end of a long, suffocating silence. And this is, again, what he saw against the backdrop of this dark and brokenness. But everything's a mess. Everything is in need and healing. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings, of all places. Oh, back up. You got ahead of me? And you will go free, leaping with joy, like calves led out to pasture. And so he catches this sneak peek, and he sees that someday someone will show up on the scenes of world history called the Son of Righteousness. And the Son of Righteousness life and ministry will be marked by these 2 calling cards, healing and joy. The Son of Righteousness would have healing in his wings. And now if we go to this next slide, I'm going to teach you a little bit of biblical Hebrew right now. The word wings is this word kanaf. Everybody say kanaf. Kanaf. It sounds like something you would buy from a street vendor in Brooklyn, doesn't it? Yeah. Give me a kanaf with everything and a Coke. The Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his kanaf. That's the first calling card of this Son of Righteousness that the prophet Malachi foresaw would show up in a dark and broken world. Secondly, the Son of Righteousness, we saw, would rise upon a broken and dark and unhappy world with the calling card of joy. The Son of Righteousness will rise, and you will go free, leaping with joy like calves set out to pasture. So we're on the next slide. There we go. The Son of Righteousness will rise, and you will go free, leaping with joy like calves led out to pasture. And I love the imagery here. Have you ever driven by a pasture and seen this sassy little calf just bucking around the pasture like he's all that, right? That's the imagery here. It's this imagery that when the Son of Righteousness comes, we're just going to be freed into this sassy joy, this carefree joy. I love that. So healing and joy, that's what the people of Malachi's time needed. That's what the people of our time need. That's what maybe many of us need today, healing and joy. But following Malachi 4:2, for 450 years, the heavens would be like brass, suffocatingly silent for 450 years. And so it's then with this backdrop of Malachi in mind, last book of the Old Testament, we now turn to the New Testament, the Gospel of Luke, the ministry of Jesus. In Luke chapter 8, we pick up in verse 40, we read these words. So on the other side of the lake, the crowds welcomed Jesus because they had been waiting for him. And then a man named Jairus, leader of the local synagogue, came and fell at Jesus' feet, pleading with him to come home with him, his only daughter, who was about 12 years old. What's that? That's like a sixth grader? Is that 12? Is that about right? Seventh grader? All right. So it's seventh grade. His little seventh grader was dying. And as Jesus went with him, he was surrounded by the crowds. And a woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. And coming up behind Jesus, she touched the fringe of his robe. Say, fringe of his robe. Immediately the bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. Everyone denied it. Wasn't me. Wasn't me. Wasn't me, Jesus. And Peter said, Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you. But Jesus said, someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me. And when the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. And the whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. And daughter, Jesus said to her, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Well, in Matthew 44, a parallel version in another gospel, we're told in verse 44 here, we're told that the woman touched the fringe of Jesus' robe. And in the Gospel of Matthew in 9:20, so in a parallel account, I'm getting my passages all mixed up in my brain. In Matthew then, we're given a sneak peek as to what was going on in her brain, why she was thinking the fringe of Jesus' robe. And so this is what we read in Matthew 9. Said she touched the fringe of his robe, for she thought, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. And so what is it? Why would this woman have thought to herself if that she could only just touch the fringe of Jesus' robe, she would be healed? It's for this reason that by Jesus' time, the Hebrew word, which was also the Aramaic word, which is what they would have spoken here at this time. Aramaic and Hebrew are very similar. By Jesus' time, the Hebrew word for hem, or the edge of a garment, was, do you want to guess? Kanaf. It was the word kanaf. And so, this woman thought to herself, if I can just touch the kanaf of Jesus' robe, I will be healed. And so she snuck up, and in Luke 8:44 it says she snuck up behind Jesus, and she reached out and she touched the edge, the end. That's the word generally meant the wings. That's why it meant wings, the end part, the edge part of stuff. If I can just touch the kanaf of his robe, I will be healed. And immediately we were told the bleeding stopped. This woman knew Son of Righteousness will have healing in his kanaf. She believed Jesus was the Son of Righteousness, and she was immediately healed when she reached out and just touched just the edge, even the end, the outermost part of Jesus' clothes even. There was healing in his kanaf. And so this Son of Righteousness that Malachi had seen 450 years earlier had arisen on a dark and broken planet. The Son of Righteousness who had healing for broken spirits and broken minds and broken hearts and broken bodies and broken marriages and broken relationships and even a broken society, a broken planet. The Son of Righteousness who had healing for that just even in the ends, the edges, had arisen. So is it a coincidence? Just, wow, that's an amazing coincidence that Jesus' kanaf healed this woman. Well, a couple chapters later, Matthew 14, verses 35, 36 is what we read. And so when the people, recognized Jesus, like, this is that Jesus guy, the news of his arrival spread quickly throughout the whole area, and soon people were bringing all of their sick to be healed. And what did they do? They begged Jesus to let the sick just touch at least the kanaf of his robe. And all who touched him were healed. So people who were sick just begged to touch the very edge of Jesus' robe. Why did they do this? Because they heard the Son of Righteousness has come. The Son of Righteousness has arisen, and he's got healing in his kanaf, and he's got joy, sassy, leaping around in the pasture, carefree joy in his touch as well. I just love that. Well, you want to know something? Jesus is still the Son of Righteousness today. He is the Son of Righteousness for broken relationships with the Lord. And he is healing, just if we just touch even the end of Jesus' kanaf. There's healing for broken relationships with the Lord. There's healing for our broken minds and hearts and our broken bodies. Just even in the edge of the Son of Righteousness's kanaf. There's healing for broken marriages in the Son of Righteousness kanaf. There's healing for broken friendships. There's healing for a broken earth. Just even the edge of the Son of Righteousness. And he still shines upon us today. Jesus is still the Son of Righteousness today. And so what I want to do, just to close out this very simple message, is I've asked a couple people to share their real life experiences of the Son of Righteousness rising upon them, rising on dark stuff in their lives, right? Rising upon broken stuff in their lives. And so we're going to begin with Rocky. Rocky, come on up. Welcome, Rocky. We good here? All right. Rocky, what was broken? What was broken and dark?
It would probably be easier to say what wasn't broken. So here a few months ago, probably 8 months ago, I guess it was, I was in a bad way. I was hateful. I was bitter. I was angry. Nothing in my life was right. It just was bad. I just was a mess. And so it kind of all came together. You know, my wife and I couldn't get along. I was having problems at work. Everything outside of work seemed like everything I touched was just a mess. I just could not. Everything was wrong. And this bitterness, anger, just kept building and building and building. And one morning I came home and my wife got into this big argument. I was just livid, absolutely furious, mad. And I left, came back home, and I was standing in my living room, and I'm like, Lord, I don't understand. You're going to have to fix this. I do not understand. And about that time, it's like he just drove back and drilled me right in the chest. Just crushed me, and I was just stopped, and the tears started flowing. And he says to me,
so the Son of Righteousness sometimes has healing in his fist, apparently.
So I'm being honest, exactly what it felt like. He just drilled me right in the chest. So there I stood, tears. It was bad, just crying all over. And he says to me, now read your Bible. So I sit down and pick up my phone, and the verse of the day for that particular day was from Proverbs, and it said, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding. So that was even worse. So then I'm crying like a baby, because there I was, I just 3 times, I don't understand. And there he says, you don't need to understand. Acknowledge me in all your ways, and I will direct your paths. So then I get my wits about me, and I kind of calm down. I'm like, all right. So I play guitar and I sing. So I picked up my guitar, tried to get myself ready before I had to go to bed because I work third shift, and I'm playing my guitar. And I picked out a couple of gospel songs I decided that I want to play. And there's a song called I Am the Man, Thomas. Very simple song. Like I said, the first verse is I Am the Man, Thomas. So I go in the kitchen, I got this sheet out here, and I'm getting ready to play this song, and I start. I never even make it to a man. So I said, I am, and I'm just crying, bad, And then I felt the good Lord just come, and he cups my heart up. He's rocking me like a baby. He says, son, everything's going to be okay. And then from that moment on, I don't know why he chose me, but he did. And thank God that he saved me from the mess that I was. And it's just, it's awesome.
You leaping with joy like a
Yes,
calf
sir.
in the pasture.
Yeah, well, those of you who know, for sure. Yes.
So before all this, in your relationship with the Lord, had it been good, or you guys weren't getting along before?
So, I hate to tell this on myself, but so my thing was, I'd known him, so I had seen him in person. I broke my hips when I was 14 years old, and I was laying in a hospital bed, and there he stood right above my bed and told me that everything was going to be all right. So, but then that was kind of bad for me because I knew what to do. Anytime I got myself in trouble, I'd go get the Bible and I'd read and study and read and study. And when everything got good, okay, God, I got this. I don't need you anymore. You know what I'm saying? And then finally it got to a point where, hey, I need you here constantly because I have screwed this up so bad that I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to go. I need you to help me, period.
So the Son of Righteousness healing touch, that's real today.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for
Woo!
sure.
That's awesome. Okay. All right. All right, George and Julie are going to come up, and they're going to share their story of the Son of Righteousness healing a broken marriage. So welcome them up. I'm going to bring you guys up. Who's going to start? All right. George, what was broken?
Well, broken. I'm supposed to eat this mic, I'm remembering. Well, to start out, we thought we had a pretty decent start to our marriage, and we went to church. I mean, we didn't miss. Every Sunday, we led small groups. I learned to pray when I said I'll never pray in front of people. But there was something really wrong in our house, and it was me. I had a lot of anger, and there's righteous anger. Jesus had it when he overturned the tables. Well, my anger wasn't the healthy kind. I would overturn tables, but it wasn't healthy. To make a long story short, my anger was so bad that my family would just tiptoe around. It was like walking on eggshells around me, except for I didn't know it, because I thought they had a real problem with me. And my wife would often say, hey, we're not out to get you. I'm like, I know that. Why are you so mad? And this was daily. We had great days, great weekends, but our bad was very ugly. And that's where I'll go on with that.
Okay. As you'd said, it was broken. People didn't see our brokenness. It was completely, on the outside we looked really great. We were involved in church, like he said, and everything was good. But at home, it was completely broken. And I remember, I would cry out to God, and I would just asking for him to help. And I felt like he had gone silent on us. I felt like, well, this is just the way it's going to be. We're just going to have to deal with it.
So how dark and broken did it get? Where did it go?
Well, it got 13 years, right? So 13 years, and I always had hope if my wife, she just kept forgiving me, because we definitely did things right. We repented and asked for forgiveness. But what was happening was, in my own brokenness, I was so needy. I would tell other people, like Julie said, we did the right thing to the outside looking in. I would tell people that God is first, God is first. Julie's second, and family comes after that. But what she was feeling was something different in our home. My neediness that I had never admitted to. Julie made me very happy. My neediness was so bad it just sucked the life out of Julie. Just trying to keep up with everything I needed, affirmation and affection, to the 20th power. That's how ugly it got, where she had a hard time even asking anything of me because it seemed like there was always too much. I couldn't handle it, so I would just get mad.
Mm-hmm. So there was stuff broken on the inside, and that was breaking the relationship too.
Oh, wait, I was okay.
Hey, don't fight about this. It'll look really bad. Just kidding.
Actually, because we're on a time limit here, so we can go on and on for a long time. But I kind of want to get to the point of the fact that we felt like we were right with God, but even our relationship with God was broken because we weren't putting Him first. We weren't surrendering everything to Him. And it got so broken that we did separate. I moved out, and I felt peace for the first time in 13 years. I didn't have Him needing me like he was just, like he said, sucking the life out of me. We weren't fighting. It was great. But I remember it got so bad to the point of filing for divorce. And we were on the brink of filing, like the very next day. And we had agreed on that. And I remember laying in bed that night, and I remember crying out to God. And I didn't understand because during this time of separation, we really learned what it was like to focus on God. And I remember laying in bed and I said, God, I don't understand. He is seeking after you, and I am seeking after you with all of our hearts. Why is this not working? And through this, I couldn't remember. It was like there was a block on any memories in our marriage. And I couldn't remember one good memory of our marriage. And he's like, we've had all kinds of good memories. And I'm like, I can't remember one of them. And I remember laying in bed, and when I was crying out to God that night, it was almost as if He completely took that block away. And it was like a movie screen in front of me. And it's like He started playing all the good memories in our marriage. And that was the breaking point of when once you give it all to God and surrender everything, He'll take over.
So that was like the breakthrough of the healing touch of the Son of Righteousness. How about for you, George?
Well, then for me, during this time, when Julie said, I can't remember one good year in our marriage, I really thought she was screwed up. I really did. And I was out to prove it. We went to counseling, and I would say crazy things like a guy in control would say, like, if we were in a court, if we had a jury, I know we had good memories. But she couldn't. And I didn't know why. But I'll tell you in short what happened. I was really crying out to God, and I cried out to God to protect Julie. I would put a fiery hedge of protection over her. I was so scared another man would come and sneak her away from me because I just knew that it couldn't be all me. And God did protect her. And here's what happened. God hardened Julie's heart towards me. I prayed that God would protect her like His little girl. And He said, she is my little girl. And I said, God, just protect her like she's your daughter. Thinking, He protected her from me. So He hardened her heart. That's why she couldn't remember a good thing, because He was protecting her from the pain that I had caused. And I had prayed so many times, search me, O Lord, and try me. See if there's anything wicked in me. And He goes, oh, there is, and I'm going to show you.
He likes to answer that prayer.
He did. He does. And He showed me. So during that time, like you asked, I cried out to God. But I was crying out to God for Julie. God, give her back to me. I can't live without her. I'll die without her. If I can't have her back, just kill me. Just get me out of here. I need her back. And I realized through that, and God, I kept praying for truth. Julie was praying for truth for her, for me. And God opened my eyes and said, well, you're praying. You're crying out to me. I wanted you to, but you're crying out to me for Julie to be number one again. If she comes back, I'll be okay. I had to learn to let it go. I lost all hope, and I started crying out to God, for Him, for me, because I knew Julie wasn't coming back. And my relationship with Him was restored in a way that I'd never felt it. I was saved, but to really put Him first and cry out to God for God and to put Julie second, I learned that during that time when we were both seeking after Him. And that's when she prayed that prayer. And He softened her heart that night.
Hey, would you say this is fair, that you had probably been looking at Julie to be your son of righteousness who was going to heal something broken, and He had to shut that down so that you would look to the Son of Righteousness to be your Son of Righteousness. Is that a fair way of saying that? Yeah,
and during those dark years, I didn't think they were that dark because Julie did such a good, her stamina was so great. I mean, she loves unconditionally. So she could just keep putting out this love to me. And then when I'd ask for affirmation, she'd give it to me. When I needed affection, she would give it to me. But I didn't know she was burning out. I thought she could keep going, but she was silent inside. I didn't know how bad it was. And so that hit pretty hard, that it drained her. And when she said that you're sucking the life out of me, I didn't even believe her because I felt like I was a life giver. But to everybody else out there, that's what I did do, but not to Julie. It didn't come from God.
Yeah.
It came from her.
Good. So, Son of Righteousness has healed personally, maritally, and how about joy? Tell us about leaping about.
So, the leaving the calves, I told her to remind me. When Julie came back, it was really awkward because, like I said, and like she said, we were just going to file for divorce in a way that probably the court's never seen. We would just go there and just sign the papers right there. There was no fight. We were going to be friends, but not married, couldn't live together. When Julie called me and said, I need to come talk to you, God said that just go see him. I was very hesitant. As much as I say I wanted to fix this and I wanted her to come back, I was really hesitant and I didn't really want to see her. But when she showed up at my house, because we were separate, and I saw her face, it was a face I hadn't seen before because she was so open to me. And before she said, I think we are reconciled, George. But I'm like, but we're not going to reach that area of restoration, are we? And that's what that was like, and I'll let you tell them what.
Same thing. His demeanor, his face, everything was different. And it was just a complete healing. And when people ask us today, you know, what did you do? What did you? We didn't do anything. We just turned it over to God. It's all God. God completely healed and restored our marriage. And we were told that could happen, and we didn't believe it. But he did, and he is still healing today.
Awesome.
So the calves.
Oh, sakes. So leaping for joy.
So in all these years, I'd never even heard of this scripture, and I thought when he called and left a message about Micah, it was Malachi. And so I'd never seen the jumping for joy of the calves. So when Julie came back, I knew this is for real. She is back, and she's like, I remember things. And that night, she was like, I remember all the good times. I'm thinking, what? I told you. And she's like, I know, but I didn't. I didn't feel it, and I didn't. Like, God softened her heart. So I remember getting Julie in the car one day, and I just had to go show her to people like a brand new car. And I remember going to see my dad at work. And you don't know my dad, he's a tough character. And I said, hey, I'm coming to see you. And he wasn't very excited because I think he knew I was going to come bring a girl. I'm going to bring somebody else other than Julie. And we showed up, and he came out slow looking in the car. And when he saw Julie in the passenger seat, he lit up. He smiled. He couldn't believe it either. Really, nobody could believe it. That's how bad it was. But jumping down for joy, that has just gone on since that day. And because of it, God just uses us and our brokenness and our woundedness to help heal other relationships and marriages. Because we said, if you heal us, we will talk about your goodness all of our days long. And that's what we're doing.
Awesome. Let's hear a word for George and Julie. Good job. Good job. Thanks.